The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning, a piercing, digital shriek that cut through the silence of my apartment. It wasn't entirely unusual for me to get calls at this hour. My mother's health was fragile. My job was a chaotic mess of deadlines and late-night emergencies. But this call, it felt different. It felt wrong. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my eyes still blurry with sleep. The screen glowed with a familiar name, a familiar number. It was my own. My thumb hovered over the screen. A prank call? A system glitch. My heart started a low, nervous drumbeat against my ribs. I swiped to answer, pressing the cold glass to my ear. Hello. The line was dead quiet, not even the usual hiss of an open connection, just a profound, suffocating silence. I was about to hang up, chalking it up to a weird network error, when a sound trickled through. A ragged, shallow breath. Then, a voice, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. It was my voice, exactly my voice, but twisted with a terror I had never known. "Don't open the door," it rasped. A desperate, broken whisper. I froze, sitting bolt upright in bed. My own room, bathed in the pale moonlight filtering through the blinds, suddenly felt like a stranger's territory. Who is this? I managed to ask, my own voice a stark contrast to the one on the phone. This isn't funny. The voice on the other end let out a shuddering sob. It's you. It's Adrian. 5 minutes from now. The words didn't make sense, but the fear behind them was undeniable. It was a raw, primal terror that I felt in my own bones. My heart was no longer drumming, it was hammering, trying to break free from my chest. "Listen to me. You have to listen carefully," the voice pleaded, gaining a sliver of urgency. "In about 4 minutes, someone is going to knock on your door. Don't open it. Whatever you hear, whatever they say, for the love of God, do not open that door." A cold sweat slicked my skin. I glanced at the digital clock on my nightstand. 3:19 a.m. The air in the room was thick, heavy. I could barely draw a breath. "What? What happens if I do?" I whispered, my throat tight. The line went silent again. But this time it was different. It was a weighted silence, filled with regret and a sorrow so deep it felt like an abyss. After what felt like an eternity, the voice came back, barely audible. That's what I did. And then the call ended. The connection just Diev. I stared at my phone, the screen now dark. The silence that returned was 1,000 times worse than before. Every creak of the old building, every distant siren, seemed to be a countdown. 1 minute passed, then 2. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, but finding only mounting panic. Maybe I was still asleep, caught in a vivid nightmare. I pinched my arm, hard. The sharp sting of pain confirmed I was awake. Terrifyingly awake. Then it happened. A knock. Not a frantic, urgent knock, but 3 slow, deliberate raps on my front door. Thump. Thump. The sound echoed through my small apartment, each one a hammer blow to my sanity. Every instinct screamed at me to stay put, to hide under the covers and wait for morning. But a morbid, irresistible curiosity pulled me from the bed. My feet moved on their own, silent on the cold hardwood floor, carrying me towards the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the peephole. The voice on the phone, my voice, begged me not to do this. But I had to know. I had to see. I pressed my eye to the tiny glass lens. My breath hitched in my throat. The distorted, fisheye view of the hallway swam into focus. It was me, standing right there, on the other side of my door. But it was a horrifying parody of myself. My hair was matted with something dark and wet. My face was a mask of dried and fresh blood, a gash splitting my forehead. My clothes were torn, but it was the look in my eyes that shattered me. A hollow, pleading emptiness. "Open the door," this other me said from the hallway, his voice muffled but clear. It was the same broken, terrified voice from the phone. "Please, I need to warn you about something." As he spoke, something shifted in the deep shadows of the corridor behind him. It was just a flicker of movement, a distortion in the darkness. But it was there, a tall, impossibly thin shape, detaching itself from the blackness. It had no features, no face, just a presence that radiated an ancient cold. The me in the hallway didn't seem to notice it, his gaze fixed on my door. But I saw it, and I knew, with chilling certainty, what I would become if I turned that lock.
When Hector Valverde, one of the richest men in the country, died at the age of 82, the news spread everywhere. Businessman, tycoon, owner of hotels, banks, and media companies. But what everyone was really waiting for wasn't the funeral. It was the reading of the will. The lawyer's office was filled with relatives who barely spoke to each other, children who hadn't visited him in years, distant cousins, ex-wives, business partners. Everyone expected a piece of the empire. The lawyer began to read. The main mansion. To his eldest son. The companies, divided among his 3 children. The Swiss bank accounts. To his second wife. The jewelry. To his youngest daughter. And so it went on for nearly an hour, until the lawyer reached the final name. Lastly, Mr. Hector Valverde leaves 60% of his entire fortune to. Everyone looked up. The lawyer checked the paper. Antonio Garcia, total silence. No one knew who that was. The lawyer continued. Antonio Garcia, the man who worked as the building's janitor for 27 years, the only man who, according to the deceased, treated me like a human being, and not like a bank. Antonio was sitting in the back of the room, still wearing his grey uniform. No one had even noticed he was there, until that moment.
Every night, like clockwork, Laura would see him on the last train home. He'd get on at the stop right after hers, always sitting in the same car, always a few seats away. He never stared, not overtly, but she could feel his eyes on her, a shadow in her periphery. At first, she dismissed it as a coincidence. The city was huge. The routines made it small. Maybe he just lived along the same line. But then, the coincidences started piling up. One evening, she missed her usual train and caught one 20 minutes later, and there he was, getting on at the next stop, just like always. The next day, she left work early, hoping to shake the feeling of being watched. She boarded a train an hour ahead of schedule. As the doors hissed open at the next station, he stepped inside. A cold dread began to creep up her spine. This was no coincidence. He wasn't menacing. He was just there, dressed in a simple dark coat. His face was ordinary, almost forgettable. But his persistence was anything but ordinary. It was starting to consume her thoughts, turning her daily commute into a source of anxiety. Who was he? What did he want? The questions swirled in her mind, each one darker than the last. Finally, after 2 weeks of this silent, unnerving pursuit, Laura decided she couldn't take it anymore. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she waited on the platform, her palms slick with sweat. Tonight, she would confront him. Tonight, she would get answers. The train pulled in, a screech of metal on metal. She got on, took a deep breath, and waited. As expected, he boarded at the next stop. But this time, instead of taking his usual seat, Laura stood up and walked directly towards him. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling but firm. "Why are you following me?" The man didn't seem surprised. He looked at her with a profound sadness in his eyes. He opened his mouth, and the words he spoke sent an icy shockwave through her entire body. "Laura," he said softly, his voice filled with a strange, hollow echo. "You don't remember, do you? I'm not following you. I'm trying to lead you. This train, it crashed 2 weeks ago. We didn't make it." He pointed towards the window, and for the first time, she saw not the dark tunnel, but a chaotic scene of twisted metal and flashing lights. She wasn't on her way home. She was already gone. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.